I'm sure we've all heard of the situation in Tiananmen Square and how I want to give you a personal story on Tiananmen Square. At the time it was happening, I was in Hong Kong and I was in a meeting with one of our customers, one of the buyers from Park and Shop, one of the large retailers there. And data was coming in, but it was coming in pure and unfiltered. There was really no official statement. There was no social media where people could tweet out or take pictures or post what was going on. So nobody really knew what was happening. And even to this day, the West, at least, does not really understand what happened in Tiananmen Square. We have some pictures that came out. We have some details, but not as much as we'd like. I don't think anybody has quantified exactly how many people died. The rumors are, and I'm not sure if it's fact or not, but the rumors are that well, let me check on that just a second. Okay, I looked that up, and the rumors appear to be true in that the military, and the numbers are unclear to the West, but the rumor is that, or the documentation that is out there, and historians have said that 180,000 troops were called in, many of them from distant provinces that didn't have the same dialect as the students that were protesting. The soldiers being called in were not fully aware of the reason for the protest, so they were using disinformation to be able to squelch the students' protest. That would not happen today in most countries because of freedom of speech, or at least freedom of apps. And even though speech may be restricted, apps are still out there that will communicate with people in what's going on in real time, almost real time of events that are happening. Whether it's the Arab Spring and what was happening there, people were able to use their phones and use their technology to communicate what was happening where and when to meet in different riots. During the January 6th riots here in the United States, people were able to post on social media and people could then follow almost in real time, or not almost, follow in real time what was happening. So the networks, the ability to communicate today is so extensive that things happen. It's very difficult for anything to happen in a vacuum. Something that happens in Tiananmen Square today, we'll hear about today. Back in 100 years ago or 200 years ago, you heard what happened in your village. You didn't hear what happened 100 miles away. In fact, just a minute, let me think this out. In fact, in the U.S. Civil or Revolutionary War, the last real battle was Yorktown, which happened in October of 1781. The treaty wasn't signed until September of 83. But between those times, a number of other battles occurred because the people were not informed that the war had ended. In fact, there's stories about the Japanese that remained on islands well after World War II, protecting the island, not aware that the war had ended because they didn't have the communications. And another great example of that is here in the U.S. is Juneteenth, which was on June 18th in 1865, which was several years after slavery was emancipated. President Lincoln did the Emancipation Proclamation on January 1st, 1863. Some slaves were not informed by their slave owners and by society that they had been in fact freed until a couple of years later. So now we celebrate Juneteenth as a day that really kind of reflects the fact that the information was not readily available. And that's not going to happen today unless you have a country where the media and language is squelched and you can only do things that are approved by the government and that everything is monitored. Here in the United States, we have, there's been a number of complaints about censoring on our social media and kind of the social media spin and how frequently one position is heard versus the others, and what keywords will generate other keywords in searches. So it's, censoring is critical in limiting information, but the networks and the ability to communicate, and that's what's happened on products. If I have a bad product, I can respond to somebody immediately that the product was bad. If I have a good product or a good service, for example, we recently worked with a bank and their service was very good. I can go out, if I have the time, if I want to take the time, I can go out and say, here's what a great job they did. In this situation, I'll probably do that because I'm not going to need to use them again. Now, I don't do that for restaurants. If I go to a restaurant and have good service and good price and good time, I'm not going to tell the world. I don't want to tell the world about it because then next time I go there, I'll have to wait in line. So, or the prices have increased. So I don't want to tell the world about a good situation for my own selfishness. Now, I would tell them about a bad situation. If something's really bad, I'll make sure that people know. So a lot of times you have to consider that the reviews, the positive reviews may be their family and friends, the negative reviews may be consumers. And really, what does the average person think? You don't really know that. But social media helps quantify that, gets the information out there. You, as a consumer, have to decipher and determine what is of value, what is accurate, and what makes sense. I get a lot of emails from a friend of mine overseas that says, here's what's happening in the United States. And I'll scratch my head and say, wait a minute, how does he know? And I'll do some research, I'll dig deep, and it's like, no, that's not what happened. There's fake news, there's fake information that's out there. One of the things about AI and ChatGPT and all the things that are out there is they search the web. So anything that's written about things, it doesn't have the ability to say, wait, this is not true, this is not accurate. They see it on a website, and they can confirm it with one or two websites. Therefore, it must be true. My daughter, who's working with statistics on fisheries, she says you can ask the ChatGPT and some other things about statistics and numbers, and it will either give you old numbers or inaccurate numbers because they got printed and published somewhere, and that lie and that misinformation continues to pile up.